We recently finished a project for a client who does any kind of handyman services, maintenance services, and they had a problem where they use their online website to generate inbound queries. But the problem is that when people uh, create new tickets or request services, the problem that comes in is that that just absolutely swamps their inbox. So you would recognize a normal query submission form that you find on any website here. And you can select your name, your phone number, email address, and then what kind of services you require. And when you click submit, that email is sent to my client's email inbox, and then that needs to be processed. Now, if there are dozens of these requests every day, you can just imagine the amount of time that it takes to respond to each one of these queries. And the problem is, there's three problems really. Firstly, the fact that it just clogs up the inbox. So there's loads of unread mails in the inbox. Secondly, it takes time to respond to each query. And it takes at least 3 to 10 minutes to respond to each query. And you can just imagine the amount of man hours that it takes to do that. And then lastly, unfortunately, we do live in an age of spam, and people send messages that they don't really intend to follow up on. So that needs to be filtered out as well. Now, unfortunately, we managed to build an automation for them that will actually solve all three of those problems. And I quickly want to take you through what we built. This is the automation as it looks on make.com. And we combined some modules of their email system that they use, the software that they use called Zoho Mail, and combined that with AI to create an automation to filter and essentially act as an inbound gatekeeper for this client. I quickly want to talk you through the design process and what we did. Firstly, what we usually find in emails is that it needs to, the mailbox needs to be scheduled to run in a certain amount of time to check which mails are coming in. And that is quite frustrating because you have to run the automation constantly on a scheduled program. But to get around that, we used a webhook, so a mail hook essentially, where we forward the mail that is received, the inbound query, to this mail address, and it triggers it immediately. And the first thing that we do then is we put a filter in where we just check that the subject is filtered out. The subject is exactly the same one that we expect it to be, so that it doesn't process any of the other emails, only the ones that's based on the website query. And then the second thing we do is actually we built in a sleep. The reason for this is we add a couple of minutes just to give a bit of a human delay to the response so that it doesn't feel as robotic and as automatic to the user, that it feels at least as if a person has typed this email. Then we use these two modules to extract info from the text. So that we get the email from the mail hook, and that information is processed in this module where we paste the text in there and extract it using makes extract information from text module. And we extract the first name, the email of the inquirer, as well as the service that they are requesting. And we get all of that information out, and you'll see that when that extracts, that information is then available going forward for the rest of the use. And then message ID, this is quite important, especially in the mail itself. If later we want to manipulate the actual email itself, we need to be able to identify it. So instead of using the text, we actually pull out the message ID from one of the headers and use that digit to manipulate the mail any further down the line. We'll get to that now. Then we set the variables, some of the variables that we use, like the client first name, client email, client service, what we extracted, as well as a signature HTML. We'll get to this later. But the client has a very specific email signature that they use. And it's in an HTML format, and that needs to be reused every time. So what we did is, instead of creating it every time in the email module, we actually just created a variable called signature HTML. We paste the HTML in there, and that is then used in the outgoing mail. Next, what we have here, so we've got to set the variables, and these steps really go together. So what we have is, for each of the services that they have different responses based on that query. So whether it is renovations or specific services, or whether it is rubble removal or hiring a TLB, whatever it might be, they have different responses. And so for each one of those, there's a separate email that's being written. So we need to filter what is the request and then send that specific email out to them. Now, in order to do that, I used a router, and I categorized each of the website queries in a specific group. So what we did with ChatGPT is I have a look at the service, which service they are requesting, and then I say, answer only A if it is the following services, or B if it is the following, C if it's the following, or D is the following. That way, we break down, or we categorize each one of these services into a specific category, which can then be used going forward. So then when we want to only look at the home, office, kitchen, and drywall services, we have a look at only the results that's in the result A based on the ChatGPT service. We only use the category A, and then we execute that, sending that email. Now, each one of these 4 rows after the router are more or less the same. We just have different templates inside. Then we have a second step where we mark the mail as read. And then we have a final step, which is to move the email to a separate folder to show that it has been processed. I'll show you how we did that. There wasn't a specific make.com module for that, so we had to use an API call to do that. Now, firstly, just to have a look at the email again, we have the email address that we pulled out from the client email. And then for the content, we've got A and signature HTML. The reason for A, if you see there, that's another variable that we set up. So if I go back to my message variables, you'll see that A is there, B, C, and D. Each one has their own variable, and it is in HTML format. The reason for that is it can either be in text format or in HTML. HTML is a much nicer format to look at, and it looks way more professional than just a simple text format. So we preset that in a variable to present that to the client. So when the client receives the email, obviously they won't see all of the code. They will actually see the formatted email. And after we send the mail, then we mark it as read. This is a specific module in Zoho Mail that marks an email as read, which is fine. You can see that we use the message ID that we extracted earlier to mark the email as read. And then lastly, we don't have a module for, let me show you, for moving the email. So we've got create a draft message, mark an email as read, and so forth. Get attachment info, create a task. But then we've got make an API call. And this is quite common for most of the modules that you will find make an API call. And let me just show you what we did here. For this API call, I looked at the Zoho documentation to see what the specific method is that they use. And we updated it so that for this specific account, for this specific message, that message is then moved to the correct folder. And that way, when this whole automation runs, what will happen is we'll actually solve all 3 of our problems. Firstly, we'll declutter the inbox. So all of the processed mails will actually be moved to a separate folder. And then secondly, you won't have a person responding to it. It will actually be an automated response. So in that way, the person who needed to create the emails for their clients actually have time available now to do other things. And then lastly, and this is quite nice, is that because there's an automated mail, it automatically filters out the spam messages that they receive online. So in that way, with just a simple automation, they are able to save hours, and not just hours of time spending time sending mails, but actually the frustration and effort that it takes to process this inbound mail. So in that way, they can actually get more clients now, and they can process the mails faster, and they have more accuracy in which mails they do process, and which clients they receive. So once this whole automation runs, this is more or less the email that the client will receive. And something like this. This is just a simple example of what an HTML mail looks like. You'll see there's some formatting here. This is their signature as well as the email that's sent, and it's custom to that client. So we use the person's name. I just blurred it out here now for confidentiality reasons. And then they receive it so that it essentially warms up the client for you. So you don't receive the cold inbound from the website. You actually receive the follow-up response, and you know that is an accurate message from that client and one that they actually look to work together with you. Now, if you want any projects like this, if you want work done like this, if you have any questions on how to automate things into your business, just look in the description below. There's a link to set up a call with me, and we can have a discussion to look at where automation can fit into your business.